In this magnificent cathedral in Santiago, Spain, lie the remains of St. James, one of the first followers of Jesus of Nazareth and one of his 12 apostles. According to Christian legend, after Jesus ascended into heaven, James travelled to what is now Spain to spread Christian beliefs. After preaching there for several years, James returned to Jerusalem, where he was beheaded and thus became the first of the apostles to be martyred. Some of James's followers brought his body back to Spain for burial. Over the next centuries, knowledge of the location of the tomb was lost, and it was not rediscovered until the 9th century. News of the rediscovery then spread, and a growing number of pilgrims from within Spain and further afield journeyed to visit James's tomb. Over the next centuries, the number of pilgrims ebbed and flowed as Europe suffered through political and religious conflicts. But the tradition of the pilgrimage survived. In recent decades especially, the number of pilgrims has grown significantly, and they travel on a variety of routes to Santiago. Those who walk at least 100 kilometers to the cathedral in Santiago may obtain a Compostela to show that they have visited the remains of Santiago, that is, St. James. Today, pilgrims may complete the first part of their pilgrimage outside Spain and later walk within Spain to the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. Pilgrims may walk 25 kilometres on a pilgrim path in Ireland and later walk the 75 kilometres from A Coruña to the shrine of St. James in Santiago de Compostela, Spain. The Celtic Camino has 8 suggested routes in Ireland. Each of these pilgrim paths offers a wonderful opportunity to walk through a lovely part of Ireland, meet friendly people, and learn some local history. Today, we take a look at the coastal route from Bray to St. James's Church in Dublin. Camino is the Spanish word for path or way. For centuries, Irish pilgrims have been walking their way to the cathedral in Santiago. Today, 10,000 Irish people walk part of a Camino each year. A pilgrimage is a journey to a saint's tomb or shrine to pray for things people want or need, or to give thanks for blessings received. Some people begin their Celtic Camino from Bray at the foot of the cross, up on the top of Bray Head, but most people prefer to start here, at the Victorian bandstand on the Esplanade. To illustrate the Irish section of a Celtic Camino, I'm going to walk from Bray to St. James's Church in the centre of Dublin City. As we go, I'll point out some of the places of interest along the way. Later, I'll be taking the journey to northern Spain, where I'll walk the second part of the Celtic Camino from A Coruña to Santiago and the cathedral in that city. So, let's begin. Bray to Santiago. A few weeks ago, I received a Camino passport from the Camino Society, and I document that I started my pilgrimage in Bray by getting the first stamp on my passport here. I will get additional stamps along my way into Dublin, and I'll need at least 2 stamps each day when I walk the 75 kilometres from A Coruña to Santiago. This spacious esplanade dates back to Victorian times, when William Dargan, who brought the railway to Bray, built it as part of his plan to turn Bray into a popular seaside resort. And he succeeded. It's the longest established seaside town in Ireland, with a fine beach, hotels, shops, restaurants and leisure activities. A renowned resident of Bray was the Irish poet and playwright Oscar Wilde, who lived part of his childhood in this home built by his parents. It's now a hotel. After leaving Bray, I will head to Crincon, Killiney and Dalkey, on my way to Sandy Cove, Dunleary and Blackrock. After viewing the marsh in Booterstown, I will head to Sandymount Strand, Grand Canal Docks and the quays on the Liffey River. When I reach the heart of Dublin, I will walk on streets used by Camino pilgrims for hundreds of years. I will visit several churches with historic links to the Camino and finally reach my destination, St James's Church. After leaving Bray, pilgrims walk to Crincon, where they can get another passport stamp at St James's Church of Ireland. This church has been conducting services since 1863. Killiney Bay has been called Ireland's Bay of Naples, and on a warm day, Killiney Beach is a popular place to swim, fish and watch dolphins and seals enjoying the sea. In Dalkey village, pilgrims may wish to refresh at one of its cafes and perhaps visit the 15th century Dalkey Castle, which was built as a fortified townhouse to store goods and protect them from raids by local tribes. Castle guides tell stories about life in Tudor times, and visitors walk through the old church and graveyard. There are several small harbours as we walk along the coast. In the Middle Ages, Collymore Harbour was the main port for Dublin City. Most large ships offloaded their goods here because the entrance to River Liffey was silted up at the time. Today's visitors can take a boat from the harbour to the uninhabited Dalkey Island to inspect the ancient ruins of St Begnet's Church and a Martello Tower. The tower was built in the early 19th century when Britain feared an invasion by Napoleon's naval fleet, but the invasion never took place. Many species of bird have found a peaceful nesting place here and are protective of their chicks. Bullock Harbour has been a small fishing village since before the arrival of Christianity in Ireland. Another Martello Tower in the village of Sandy Cove displays possessions and other artefacts associated with Ireland's most famous author, James Joyce. Joyce stayed here in 1904, and the tower features in the first pages of his masterpiece, Ulysses. I get another stamp on my Camino passport here. The tower looks out onto the 40-foot, a bathing place where people have been swimming for more than 250 years. The promenade at Newtown Smith links Sandy Cove to Dunleary, where we pass a beautiful Victorian park. Dunleary has one of the world's largest man-made harbours, which was built to shelter boats waiting to enter Dublin port during the fierce storms that batter Dublin Bay. With such a magnificent harbour, it's not surprising that sailing is a popular leisure activity. Before Ireland gained its independence, many British government officials chose to reside in Dunleary, and the influence of Georgian, Victorian and Edwardian architecture is evident in the town. Sea Point Strand was once the location of a major tragedy. In 1807, 2 ships carrying military troops and their families were shipwrecked in Dublin Bay when they were caught in a violent snowstorm and gale-force winds. One of the ships, the Rochdale, struck the rocks at the base of this Martello Tower, and 265 perished, including 44 women and 29 children. The second ship, the Prince of Wales, was wrecked further along the coast at Black Rock, and 120 soldiers were drowned. In medieval times, Black Rock was a small fishing village. Today, it's a prosperous suburb of Dublin City, with a wonderful park. The marsh in Booterstown is an important feeding and roosting area for ducks, geese and waders, and it's a refuelling and resting spot for migrating birds. A rapid train service moves thousands of commuters from Bray and elsewhere into and out of Dublin City. We cross the railway tracks at Merrion Gates and head to Sandymount Strand. Turlough O'Donnell, chairman of the Camino Society Ireland.
There's a simple story told about a young monk in Japan who's walking on pilgrimage, and he passes the old Zen master, and the Zen master says to him, what is it that you're doing? And the young monk says, I am on pilgrimage. And the master says, and what is the matter of your pilgrimage? What's your pilgrimage all about? And the young monk says, I don't know. I pilgrimage aimlessly. And the old master says, that's so, because not knowing is the greatest intimacy. The greatest gift you can give yourself is to embark on the journey to Santiago, not knowing what the purpose of your journey is. So this may be the first time in your life that you have a chance, like the Spalpeen, to take to the road without agenda, without aim, a chance to experience what is going around you in the moment, a chance to experience what is going on in you, a chance to live without any aim or purpose, free, perhaps for the first time in your life.
During the 17th and 18th centuries, the Dodder River was the main source of Dublin's drinking water. After crossing the bridge in Ringsend, pilgrims walk alongside the river and then cross over the lock gates at the entrance to the Grand Canal docks. These were built in the 1790s to link the Grand Canal with the River Liffey and accommodated about 150 sea-going vessels. This area has undergone major redevelopment, and it has been dubbed Silicon Dock, as it has become a popular location for high-tech multinational companies. The quays beside Dublin's major river, the Liffey, have also been redeveloped with numerous office and apartment blocks. This diving bell on Sir John Rogerson's quay was used for almost 90 years during construction of the quay walls on the Liffey. When the bell was lowered into the river, it had an air pocket within which men worked to level the riverbed before massive concrete blocks were put into position on the riverbed. The Liffey River divides Dublin into north and south, and most of the bridges that span the river are named after Irish politicians and cultural icons. The famous Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava designed the Samuel Beckett Bridge, which looks like a traditional Celtic harp. We cross over the Sean O'Casey Bridge to the north side of the Liffey to see these larger-than-life bronze figures of famine victims. Famines in 19th century Ireland killed more than 1 million people and forced another million to sail to a new life overseas. This tall-mast sailing vessel is a replica of the Jouney Johnston that carried 2,500 emigrants to North America between 1847 and 1855. Irish Camino pilgrims would have sailed on the Liffey when they travelled to and from Spanish ports. After crossing back to the south side of the Liffey via Butt Bridge, we are just 4 kilometres from St James's Church, our destination. From here on, we will trace the path that Irish pilgrims walked in medieval Dublin. Cathy Scuffle is historian in residence with Dublin City Council.
Dublin. When you say Dublin, few people would make the connection with St James and the Camino. And yet all of the clues that link Dublin to Santiago de Compostela are there to be found for locals and for tourists alike.
One of the oldest maps we have for Dublin dates from 1610, carried out by Speed. And if you look at this map closely, you'll see a hospital located on the river's edge, very near current Townsend Street.
And it was put there as a hospital and hostel for travelling pilgrims and an opportunity for them to get treatment or care or rest before they undertook their pilgrimage. There's a monument called the Stein, quite near Townsend Street in Dublin. It's a modern interpretation of the original Stein or Steen stone, which goes back to Viking Dublin. It's reputed to be the place where the Vikings first landed in Dublin and gives us an idea of how far the seashore came inland from where it is today. So that would have been the place of departure for pilgrims before they went to Spain.
In medieval times, the Priory of Allhallows was one of the wealthiest and most important religious monasteries in the Dublin area. After the dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century, the priory was outlawed and its buildings became Trinity College under a royal charter granted by Queen Elizabeth I of England. Founded in 1592, it is the oldest surviving university in Ireland. Opposite Trinity College's main entrance is an impressive building that housed the old Irish Parliament until it was abolished in 1800. The building then became the Bank of Ireland. Many, including the architects of the Capitol building in Washington, have imitated the design of this building. When Dublin Castle was built, early in the 13th century, it had large circular towers at each corner, but only one still stands above ground. The castle was the headquarters of English and later British administration in Ireland. After Ireland gained independence in 1922, the castle was handed over to the new Irish government. It is now used for state functions and is a tourist attraction. Christ Church Cathedral has been in Dublin since the 11th century, and many pilgrims would have come here to visit the shrine of St Lawrence O'Toole, who, while Archbishop of Dublin, played a critical part in the defence of the city during the Anglo-Norman invasion of 1169. Reverend Dermot Dunn is Dean of Christ Church Cathedral.
Christ Church Cathedral is as old as Dublin itself. Its very foundation dates back to 1030, when a Viking wooden structure was founded here and then replaced in the 12th century by a stone building. This was done by St Lawrence O'Toole with Strongbow. This cathedral church began its life as a monastic foundation So people would have been welcomed here on their journey on the Camino as a place of rest, as a place of solace, and as a place of prayer. They'd also have received nourishment for the journey. I'm very happy that here in Christchurch we've embraced the Camino as a way of expressing our spirituality. And therefore, I think it's important that we are a stamping station on that pilgrimage.
Just beyond Christchurch Cathedral are two St Audians churches with links to the Camino. The medieval St Audians is a Church of Ireland church, which has the imprint of a Camino scallop shell on its baptismal font. Though still a working church with services every Sunday, this church is a heritage site, open for visitors during the summer months. The new St Audians Roman Catholic Church was built in the late 1800s. Today it is the church of the Polish community in Ireland. Beside the entrance are two large shells that are used as holy water fonts. Before work began on converting Forley's shop on Thomas Street into student accommodation, archaeologists discovered numerous graves, two of which contained scallop shells, indicating that pilgrims returning from Santiago de Compostela had been buried here. The burial site was part of the cemetery of the local Abbey of St Thomas. Local historian Cathy Scuffle.
This area of Dublin is known as St James's Gate. It's named after this gate, which is now an entrance to Guinness's brewery. But in the Middle Ages, this stone archway would have spanned the road here, near where St Thomas Street and St James's Street meet. Pilgrims would pass under the arch into and out of old Dublin city.
Founded in 1759, Guinness Brewery continues the tradition of brewing at James's Gate. Its Storehouse Museum is one of Dublin's most popular tourist attractions. It's an experience that tells the story of Ireland's most famous stout, with tastings in a rooftop bar. King Henry II of England founded the first St James's Church here in 1190. In the Middle Ages, many pilgrims assembled near here at the start of their Camino pilgrimage. This Church of Ireland building was built in 1707. It was deconsecrated and now houses the Pierce Lyons Whisky Distillery that offers tours of the converted church and graveyard. Tracy Flinter is General Manager of the distillery.
In our finds cabinet here you will see a number of relics and maps and also pictures. There's over 800 years of history that connects Irish pilgrims and the Camino. One of our old maps here is actually a medieval map which shows that pilgrims from Ireland have been leaving these shores for over 800 years in order to complete the Camino. The scallop shell is a symbol of St James. On July 25th we have the Feast of St James. It was tradition for Dublin's children to actually come to the graveyard here and place lovely white shells and scallop shells on the graves of those who have passed. In our beautiful stained glass window, you will see two pilgrims making their way upon the Camino.
Pilgrims can get the final stamp on their Celtic Camino passport in the Visitors Centre of the Pierce Lyons Distillery. Or they may do this at St James's Catholic Church on the other side of the street. There has been a Catholic church here since medieval days, but this building has been the parish church since 1844. A statue of St James stands to the left of the altar, and there's been a continuing link between the Camino and the church here since the 12th century. The Camino Society has its offices here, and I get my Celtic passport stamped to show that I have completed the Bray to St James's Church pilgrim path. I will get my name inscribed in the Book of Pilgrims, an illustrated book in the tradition of the Book of Kells. and other ancient manuscripts.
Mike, congratulations. This is your Celtic Camino Compostela. Don't forget to bring it with you to Santiago. One Camino. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll be on my way as soon as I can arrange it.
Well, I've made it. I'm here in St James's Chapel, in St James's Church, in James's Street in Dublin. I've completed the first part of my Celtic Camino from Bray to Dublin City. On the way, I've passed and seen many interesting places and sights, some of which I'll need to return to again to take in more fully. On the way, there have been places where I've been able to rest, reflect, and meditate. But now I'm ready for part 2 of my Celtic Camino. I will schedule to travel to northern Spain and walk the 75 kilometers from A Coruña to Santiago Cathedral. I'll visit St James's Shrine and, like many other pilgrims, follow tradition and hug St James's statue. I'll get my Camino de Santiago Compostela, and at that stage I may be ready to consider making another Camino pilgrimage in Spain, or perhaps walking one of the other Celtic Camino pilgrim paths. If you would like to walk the Celtic Camino, or would like more information about the Camino in general, please contact the Camino Society Ireland. They will be delighted to help you prepare for your Camino pilgrimage.